All right, thank you for being here. We were strategic with the video. We knew that there would be somebody that would come in late, and of course that was Scott Mitchell. So anyway, had to call you out. I do want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Strategic planning is a super important part of what all ISDs do, especially when they are growing school districts. One of my favorite quotes is from Dr. C. Everett Koop. He said, "Life affords no greater responsibility, no greater privilege than the raising of the next generation." As you guys know, Texas is unique because we are the only state in the union that has independent school districts. And that independent word is important because that means we have local control, we have local autonomy when it comes not only to our facilities and our curriculum, but also to making the best decisions for our kids and our community. The group in charge of making those decisions is our school board, and we have them with us tonight. And I'd like to just recognize them quickly by name. Our president, Mark Jackson, our vice president, Barbara Townsend, our secretary, who could not be with us tonight, Dr. Barbara Harrington, past president, Nancy Alana, Dr. Paula McDonald, and Mike Moore. Chris Willis is also a member who could not be in attendance tonight. He is with his baby daughter who is in the hospital, and keep him in your prayers. He will be actually stepping down off the school board in November, and our trustees have also invited the candidates running for school board to participate in this meeting with us tonight. And I think we have a few of them here, and so I'll just recognize them. Melanie Graff, Susan Wood, Brett Deason, Courtney Gore, and Betsy Ross. And so we thank the candidates for school board for being with us tonight. I will say that this is not a political event, but we want to make sure that our trustees and those who are looking for leadership positions in the district have the opportunity to hear this information. It is not a called and posted meeting, so don't expect our trustees to be gathered together having conversations about school. They are here to look and listen and observe and learn just like you are. So we really want it to be an interactive experience. The structure of the meetings is pretty simple. We have 5 meetings. We'll have a general session at every meeting. The first one is on demographics and growth, which you'll hear from Bob Templeton here shortly. From there, we will actually go out these doors and into breakout groups to allow just for a little more interaction. We will start promptly at 6 o'clock, and we will end promptly at 8 o'clock, so you'll only miss the first hour of the Cowboys game, Doug, and we'll have you out of here. And then from there, let me just say that our goal as a district is to be an educational destination, something I talk about a lot. I think that Granbury is already a residential destination. We know that people move to our community because it's a great place to live. We want to be known for our schools. We want to be known for our great schools, and we want people from across Texas to say, "I want to move to Granbury," because that's the school you want to put your kids in. So tonight, what we're here for, what this is it's a conversation to discuss long-term growth for the district. We cannot control that Granbury is growing, but we can certainly control how we're growing, and that's what the conversation is about tonight. What this is not is it's not a rubber stamp. We're not looking for you guys to come in and say, okay, the school lays out a plan and y'all are going to stamp it and then we'll run it out for a bond, because certainly the issue of growth is about more than just bonds. Facilities is a part of the conversation, but in addition to that is academic and financial accountability, the ability for parents to have a voice in their child's education. So I think as a public school administrator, sometimes we get a bad rap that we don't believe in school choice. The truth is that I, along with every administrator in this room, believe very much in school choice. A parent should have the right to choose where their kids go to school. It is just my hope and my goal that the best choice is Granbury ISD, and we hope that you guys will join us on that journey as we take the next few weeks to really dig deep into the conversations about growth in this district, the future of our programs in this district, and certainly the benefit to our kids and to our community. And so with that, I will turn it over to Bob Templeton. He is our demographer. He's worked with the district for many years. He works with districts across the state of Texas, and Bob is with Templeton Demographics, and we are glad to have him here tonight. We are going to pass around handouts of his presentation. You have a portfolio that we gave you. At every meeting, we'll try and give you information just to kind of arm you with the facts as we move forward. And Bob will remain here for questions after his presentation. And so with that, please join me in welcoming Bob Templeton.
Well, good evening. It is great to be with you tonight. Just a little background. Our firm does demographic study work for school districts all over the state of Texas. We are based in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have 12 full-time employees. We work with about 100 school districts every year, and a majority of those are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We were engaged this past spring to do an update. At that time, we interviewed the city, we interviewed county, we interviewed builders, developers. We spend a significant amount of time studying the new housing market so that we can understand how many new homes are built. We also study the multifamily picture so that we can understand the multifamily impact on housing and on growth. We geocode the students to their addresses so that we can understand what is the yield of students per home. We look at the overall DFW region to look at job growth, to see how the regional economy is performing. And of course, no surprise here, this has been the craziest 18 months that I have ever seen doing demographics and planning. I've been doing this for almost 30 years, all in the state of Texas, and with pretty good success. But needless to say, I've never worked through a pandemic. And on the flip side of that, when we interviewed builders and developers in March of 2020, the initial reaction from builders and developers across the country was a pullback, caution, a little slow in buying land, a little slow in moving forward because of the uncertainty of what the pandemic was going to do. Now, needless to say, here we are 18 months later, and builders have had the best 18-month period that they've seen in a very long time. And so it was quite an unusual past 18 months. Now I'm going to start by spending a little bit of time looking at the enrollment history for Granbury ISD. I'm going to touch on some of the economic things that we're seeing around the region. Then we're going to get a real close look at housing, because housing is a key indicator for population growth. When we build more homes, more people move into the area, the overall population grows, as then does the school-age population. Now, this is a table. It's looking at the enrollment pattern for the school district for the last 5 years. The yellow shaded area is indicating the largest grade per year. The green shaded area is the second largest grade per year. I like to look at the two largest grades so that I can see if there's a wave or any patterns that may be taking place. And you'll notice this year's enrollment, both the 9th and 8th grade are the largest two grades at 632 kids per grade. And then we've got a large 3rd grade class down here. And you can see it's been one of the largest grades for the last 3 years. Overall, we had a very strong enrollment growth this year. Now, fortunately, whenever we did our work in the spring and we produced a set of projections this past spring that we presented to the school board, we did anticipate what we called it a COVID bounce back. So you'll notice the enrollment last year was flat. We didn't see any growth last year. Now, the reality was, because of the pandemic last year, we had a reduction in pre-K, kindergarten, younger elementary grade levels, and we saw this across the state of Texas. This was not anything specific to Granbury. In fact, the state of Texas, for the first time ever, had negative enrollment last year. In fact, the state's enrollment dropped 120,000 kids. Now, that happened all over the country. It wasn't unique to Texas, but it was related to the pandemic. Now, we anticipated a COVID bounce. Now, the Delta variant has put a little bit of a damper on that, so we have seen many of our clients that didn't see that full COVID bounce back in their enrollment, but fortunately for Granbury, the enrollment did take a bounce, and this September, this is enrollment from a couple of weeks ago, was at 7,735, up about 266 kids from the previous year, which is about a 3.6% growth rate. Now, we also know, because of our research, we're experiencing very strong housing growth. Now, this housing growth is also happening across the state of Texas. So even during the pandemic, record-breaking unemployment, record-breaking job loss, we're building more homes in the DFW region than we built in the last 15 years. And that's happening pretty much across the state of Texas. Now, I want to point out these younger grade level cohorts. The kindergarten class grew almost 15%. So we had a huge jump at kindergarten this year. The elementary grade levels very strong in their return. Also, you'll notice the 5th, 6th grade, we grew almost 6%, 8th grade 6%, 10th, 9th grade 10%. So we had very strong growth in these middle school grade levels. We did expect to see that, so we did build that into the projections as well. Now, overall, in terms of the overall economy, you can see the unemployment rates prior to the pandemic for the DFW region were down below 4%. The DFW region was one of the strongest economies in the country. When the pandemic came into play, it shot up to almost 13% was the unemployment rate. This was far worse than anything we've ever seen, even worse than the Great Depression. During the Great Depression, the unemployment rate gradually worked itself up, but this was an immediate shock to the system. Now, you'll also notice when we began to reopen, the unemployment rate dropped back down pretty significantly. It has stayed in that 6% range through the spring of last year, and now it's working itself back down, and it's back to about 4.7%. Now, the reason that the DFW regional economy is so strong is because it's a very diverse economy. It's logistics, it's professional services, it's some manufacturing, and we're seeing some increase in manufacturing opportunities. In fact, it's becoming an automobile manufacturing hub with GM. It's likely that Fort Worth is the leading contender for an electric vehicle manufacturing facility that would be located in West Fort Worth. So that's the Rivian electric plant. Fort Worth is the #1 contender to land that facility. That's the equivalent of a Tesla plant. So it'd be huge for West Fort Worth. We do believe it benefits West Fort Worth and even Southwest Fort Worth because of the Chisholm Toll Road and access up to get to those locations. But overall, this unemployment rate is one of the more favorable unemployment rates that we're seeing across the country. Now, just some general demographic stats. The overall population in Granbury ISD, so if we counted just the population within Granbury's limits, it's grown almost 35% from the 2010 census. So it's up to about almost 65,000 people live within the boundary of Granbury ISD. I don't know if you think about yourself as that high of a population, but it is growing, and it's up from about 48,000. Now, the below age 18 population, it's a general way to look at school age population, has grown 28%. So it's up from about 11,200 to about 14,000, almost 400. The median household income has grown 25%. The number of households in the district have grown 33%. Now, one thing that the pandemic did is it accelerated some trends. You know, there were some individuals that were already working remotely prior to the pandemic. The pandemic came into play. We had a huge shift to remote work, virtual work, and then that has accelerated this trend, and a portion of that is here to stay. It's not going away. Our firm, with 12 employees, went totally remote when the pandemic started. I only have one person that wants to come into the office now. And so we've made the decision to allow our employees to work remote. That's happening at a great extent across the country. Now, what it has done, it has caused or allowed builders to build further out because families are desiring to be in these exurb areas, and we're seeing it in Pilot Point, we're seeing it in in Gunter, we're seeing it in Sulphur Springs, Brock, all these fringe areas around that used to be a little outside of the suburban rings are now much more accessible because of the amount of people that are working remotely. Now, I said we track home sales very closely. This is going back all the way to 2012. This is total home sales. This includes new homes, existing home sales, and you'll notice the trend, it's accelerating. 2020, that's likely the highest number of home sales that the district has ever seen. It topped about 2,800 home sales. This is year-to-date 2021 through August is about 2,035. The only thing that's slowing that down a little bit is there's a shortage of supply of existing homes. So existing homes short, and so then the new home market is benefiting from that. The only challenge new home is having is the supply chain, labor, cost, those things it's taking longer to get homes finished. So there's a little bit of a delay in new home construction, but we do expect 2021 to also be a very strong year for new home construction. Of that 2,800, about 300 to 400 of that is new homes. So we're building anywhere from 300 to 400 new homes per year presently. Now the outlook is that that's likely going to increase. Now, no surprise here, the average price for a new home has gone from $207,000 in 2010 to year-to-date in 2021, almost $300,000. So we're seeing this kind of inflation in the cost of new homes, which is also impacting the existing home values. It's gone from $190,000 up to $278,000. So overall, we're seeing very strong inflation. That's good news if you're a seller. It's a little bit of a challenging news if you're a buyer, but we're seeing this happening all over the state of Texas. Now here's a map of your district. It's shaded with the elementary attendance zones. These green shaded areas are active subdivisions. The yellow are the futures. Where you see a red outline around a yellow shaded area is indicating that development activity is taking place. So the bulldozers, the earth moving equipment has shown up where you see these red outlines, and so they are in the process of delivering lots. We have 20 actively building subdivisions. There are 12 future subdivisions, and there is development activity taking place on about 380 lots, which will likely be delivered in the next 6 to 8 months. Now, on the multifamily side, we are seeing an increase in multifamily activity as well. Now, some of the multifamily is age restricted, so it won't have an impact on students to the district, but we do like to track all of it so that you're aware of what's taking place. But you can see we've got about 445 units that are under construction. There's another 128 units that are in the planning stages, and about 225 of the units are that age-restricted category that would not have an impact of students to the district. You can see the purple shaded areas. Those are the ones that are actively under construction right now. The turquoise shaded areas are in the planning stages, so they are future developments that have not started construction yet. Now, some of the details on the single family. Saratoga is 520 total lots, about 309 future lots. About 29 homes are under construction, 74 vacant developed lots that are available. There is some concern for the future phases due to sewer capacity, so we're well aware of the moratorium that is in place right now that could have an impact on some of the future development along that 377 corridor, which is kind of north of the city. That does not affect the other areas of the district. It doesn't affect what's going on in Crescent, so there's definitely area for growth even outside of this sewer moratorium area. But this is D.R. Horton. D.R. Horton is the largest builder in the country. They typically build high volume. They build at a very fast pace. The current yield of students per home in Saratoga is 0.407. We do expect that yield is going to go up each year significantly as more and more homes get occupied. Normally, a D.R. Horton subdivision will yield between 0.6 and 0.8 is where we see a single-family yield for homes that are in this price point. Next, we're going to look at Cardinal Woods, which is 40 future lots. The groundwork is underway on all of those lots. Home building is estimated to begin this coming up spring of 2022. There is a commercial development just off of Highway 4, which will begin after the residential area is complete. Next, we're going to look at Main Place, which is 111 total lots. It's almost built out. One vacant developed lot. Average home price is above $240. The current yield is 0.473. Next, we've got Acton Landing, which is 197 total lots. About 145 are occupied, 7 under construction when we did the research. That price point is about $280,000, and the yield is 0.476 in Acton Landing. Next, we've got Fountain Village, 76 total lots. There's 1 lot remaining, so it's almost built out. Starts at about $235,000. When we did the geocode, we just had 2 students that geocoded to Fountain Village. Next, we've got just a little spot here that's Legacy Park. It is age restricted, so there'll be no students that'll come out of Legacy Park. Rolling Creek Ranch, 278 total lots, about 217 are occupied, 1 home under construction, 60 vacant developed lots, building about 30 to 40 homes per year. The average price starts at $375. The current yield is 0.355 students in Rolling Creek Ranch. Abe's Landing, 338 total lots, 49 futures. The final plat for the remaining lots was approved by the city in April of 21. Plans to extend the Landing Boulevard to Weatherford Highway could spur future development. The current yield is 0.225 students per home in Abe's Landing. Now, some future developments that we're just starting to track. The Crocus Creek, 300 future lots, mixed-use development. The initial phases of the design, it's undergoing rezoning and platting, so there's still a little bit of work to do for them to get that approved. But the lot counts could range between 275 to 300 future lots in this area just around the loop in the Bacchus Elementary Zone, and it's Crocus Creek. I may be mispronouncing that. Sandstone, which is another future development, 105 future lots. The groundwork is underway on all of the lots. It's comprised of 3 phases, 22 patio homes, 83 single-family homes. It does include a commercial space just off of Loop 567. Then we've got a small infill development that's Jesse James Edition, 65 future lots, patio homes by the Blue Diamond Builders. It's under the review process. They are reformatting their plant, so there again, they have some work to get done before they'll get the final approval for the Jesse James Edition. Now we're going to move a little bit north of the city. The Petite Hill Ranch, 250 future lots. The groundwork is underway on phase 1, which includes about 97 lots. Estimated lot delivery by the end of 2021, so they could be starting construction first part of 2022. Anticipate building about 100 homes in 2022. That price point is speculatively at about $600,000. The Crescent Mud is about 500 future lots, estimated to begin placing units in about 5 years. This MUD agreement is in the development stages. I believe it's the same developer that's doing this development up here, which is the extension of this development that's already existing. It's about 1,500 to 2,000 future lots, estimated to begin placing units in about 5 years. The MUD agreement is still in the development stages as well. These are kind of hybrid of a manufactured type product that we're seeing in these crescent areas. Now moving back down towards Granbury, this Comanche Cove, about 1,680 total lots, 452 occupied, about 1,200 vacant developed lots, and most lots are sold. They're building about 5 homes to 10 per homes year. per year. So in these developments, it's common for individuals to buy lots, and they may sit on these lots for several years. There's no time frame for them to build. Unlike the D.R. Horton development, where we see production builders, those lots will turn very quickly and the homes will build very quickly. But it will be several years before we build out the lots in Comanche Cove. We do have a new development that is under development. So they've started development. It's 138 lots. The final plat was approved, and it was annexed into the city. Groundwork is underway on all of the lots in the 144 residence. Okay, let's see. Indian Harbor, which is 1,900 total lots, about one home under construction. It's the same thing there. We've got about 158 vacant developed lots, building about 10 to 20 homes per year. That price point is around 150 to 320. It's yielding about 0.15 students per home. Canyon Creek, almost 3,000 total lots, building about 20 to 25 homes per year. That price range is 150 to 275, and the yield is 0.348. Now, the multifamily yield, just to give you some perspective, this is kind of looking at the multifamily. We've color-coded them based on the yields. Anything that's green is yielding less than 0.15. The yellow is yielding between 0.15 and 2.5. Orange, between 0.25 and 0.5. And the red is greater than 0.5. This is it's a manufactured housing area that is yielding greater than 0.5, but a majority of the multifamily in Granbury is in this yellow to green category that's yielding less than 0.25. Now, this is a map that has the geocoded students. So these little dots actually represent the students, geocoded to their addresses. We've got about 113 students that are residing outside the district, and a majority of those, if not all of those, are employees' kids that are transferring in with their parents. And that's a pretty common practice that we see. A majority of school districts do allow for the employees' kids to come in with their parents that live outside the district. This is a very small percentage overall at about 1.5%. We've got about 692 students, or almost 9%, that reside within the city limits of Granbury. And right now, we've got about 78 students that reside in the city of Crescent. So way up here, about 1%. So you'll notice we've got a lot of students that are outside the city limits of Granbury, spread out throughout the remainder of the district. Now, we do use the birth rate data to help guide our enrollment projections. So we look at the births by zip code, and then we use that as a guide, and you'll notice that the zip code births last couple of years, very good. Last year it was actually 647, 578 back in 2016, which then impacted the 2021 kindergarten number. So we do expect that kindergarten number to stay in the 620 to 570 range for the foreseeable future. Now here's a look at the enrollment projections that we've just recently updated. So you'll notice next year's enrollment is growing at about 3.9%, which would put the district at about 8,040. Over the next 5 years, we expect the district's enrollment could top 9,100 students, and in 10 years, the enrollment's going to be approaching 11,000 students. So you'll notice that we're almost 2,500 students in 5 years, and then a similar number in that 5 to 10 year range. Now here's what it looks like at the campus level. Now we did build in, as Dr. Glenn mentioned, this does build in the expansion of the pre-K program. It does build in the dual language opportunities that will be coming into play. And so what you'll notice is the yellow is when those campuses exceed the capacity. So this is the functional capacity number that's in this far left column. And so in the 2023-24 school year, it's quite likely that we will have 3 elementary schools exceeding capacity. You'll notice that Acton Elementary is growing at a very fast rate. That's due to the growth at the Crescent area and Petite Hill. And so that is going to put that enrollment well over 1,000 students by the 2025 year. And you'll notice that the Bacchus Elementary Zone gets to about 700 in 2025 or 2026. And then we've got the Oaks Woods Elementary at 670. And then the Bronner Elementary is at 809. Then it drops due to that the dual language change there. That's what causes that drop of the enrollment here. Now, it's going to continue to grow, but it's likely going to stay under its capacity for the foreseeable future. Now, between the two middle schools, Acton Middle School will be exceeding its capacity in 2026. So within 5 years, it could get to about almost 1,200 students. And your high school numbers, you're going to get to about 2,500 students by 2027. I'm going to summarize, then be ready to answer some questions. The district did experience a bounce back in enrollment this fall. So we did see that return from students that may have declined enrollment last year. But overall, Granbury is forecasted to close more than 3,000 homes in the next 10-year period. So this 3,000 new homes is what is driving this enrollment growth pattern. Granbury ISD currently has 12 future subdivisions with over 3,800 future lots that are in the planning stages. In 5 years, the enrollment in Granbury ISD could increase by about 1,300 students. Granbury is projected to enroll about 10,867 students by the fall of 2030. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir. Those, I just know off the top of my head, those are yielding in that 0.7 to 0.8 range. So it is a much higher yield. It's probably the most affordable housing in the district. Yield is students per home or students per housing type, such as single family, multifamily. We calculate that every time we do a geocode so that we can see how the yields are changing, but it kind of goes back to this dot map. And so we then count the number of, the number of occupied homes in these areas divided by the number of students gives us that yield. And you'll notice that the yields were, for the most part, were in that 0.2 to 0.4 range, a little bit lower. You know, historically, Granbury ISD has been it's been a lifestyle community that was the lake, the charm of your community, a retirement area. And now we're starting to see it change as D.R. Horton and some of these production-type builders are building homes. We are seeing the yield change just a little bit. Now, up in Crescent, up in the far north part, that is, it's kind of a manufactured type. It's a little different than a mobile home, but it is still what I would classify as manufactured housing. And we do tend to see those yields higher because of the affordability. Yes, sir. Yes. And Saratoga. D.R. Horton, because it's a production builder, tends to draw families with kids. Versus the stuff down in this area, those are lower yielding, a little higher price point, so therefore it's going to have a lower yield. We don't assume the yield is constant for every new home, so we do base the yields differently based on the price point as the primary factor that impacts the yield.
Bob's not going anywhere. He'll answer your questions, but I do want to point something out. First of all, this committee is not a hard sell for a bond, but I think it's important for that to be in the conversation when you look at our enrollment numbers, because keep in mind, the earliest the district could call a bond would be May of 22, and right now, and we're fortunate to have our architects in the back with us. Paul Thompson with Huckabee is here, and he'll be available to answer questions. But in the conversations that he and I are having as it relates to construction and supply chain, a building that used to take 2 years to build right now is taking 3 years to build. So that means if a bond is passed in May of 22, that facility will not open until August of 2025. And so anything that we talk about today at the earliest would open in 2025. And if that's pushed back a year, it goes to 2026 and so on and so forth. And I will say this, our trustees chose the majority of you who are in the room with us tonight, and I know there are some people out there that will never, ever, ever support a bond, and that is totally okay. I get that. we are here tonight to have a conversation. We want to understand where you're coming from, and we just want you to understand where we're coming from as we look at the numbers and we look at the data. And so we're glad that Bob's with us. He does this all over the state and is probably the most knowledgeable demographer in the state, so we're certainly glad he's with us. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to him for more questions.
I would add, I'm often asked how confident am I in the projections. And so in your case, 9,100 students. I'm very confident that you're going to get to 9,100 students. That's not a question of if. It's a question of when. When are you going to get to 9,100 students? Because the amount of housing that is eventually going to be built, the amount of movement that's happening outside of the DFW Metroplex, so it truly is not a question of if this is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Is it going to happen a little faster? Does it slow down if the interest rates go up or if there's other problems with the overall economy? Even when we saw the recession back in 2007, it did not stop growth for Frisco, Prosper, Northwest. It didn't stop it. It just slowed it down. So here, I would say you are going to get to this 9,100 number. I'm also the most confident in the secondary projections. So the middle school and the high school, those I have the greatest confidence in because I have so much more leading indicators on the younger grade levels. So by understanding that this 632, these are large grade levels that are here, I know with great certainty they're going to move on up and eventually get into the high school. The same thing for the middle schools. When I see these numbers here, those come into play and help me with the projections. The greatest uncertainty is around pre-K and kindergarten. So where there's a little more vulnerability to the projections, it would be at kindergarten and pre-K. And so these have great confidence. And overall, you need to plan for at least 9,100 students because the reality is they're coming. When Northwest failed a bond election, it didn't stop the growth. And so these families are coming, and they will enroll their kids when they get here. Questions? Great question. So the question was, why would we not rebalance? Now keep in mind at elementary campuses, it's very hard to get to 100% utilization because what happens is at a grade level, they don't come in equal distributions. If I've got 115 kids in a grade level, I now need to have 6 sections to support that 115 kids. So then, as soon as that happens, then that grade level becomes a little bit under in its ratio. But redrawing boundary lines is a strategy that you can use. I don't recommend it if it's a Band-Aid because it needs to be able to last 4 to 5 years. If you can redraw boundaries and that boundary movement will last 5 years, then I'm not going to be causing families to have to change schools during their elementary years. Now, if I move them once, it's not ideal, but it can help. But certainly by 2025, 26, you will have exhausted all of your capacity. So additional capacity will be needed. And as Dr. Glenn mentioned, it takes 3 years to build a school or to add capacity. So therefore, some decisions are going to need to be made fairly soon about how do we take care of, we'll just say 4,600 kids at the elementary level. Great question.
So the capacity of Granbury High School is 2,500 kids. Now, if we have high school teachers that are in here right now, they will say we are at capacity right now. And if you're at the next meeting, we're actually going to show you pictures of what our hallways look like in between classes. And I probably don't have to tell you because I know your daughter graduated last year, and so she felt it. This building has been in existence a long time, and we've done a great job of expanding it. But what I can tell you is that our commons areas, so like our cafeteria and our hallways, were not built for 2,500 kids. And so when we start trying to move 2,500 kids up and down the hallways, it feels very, very crowded on a day-to-day basis. But how do we get to 2,500 kids? I'll tell you how we get there. That is taking the I call them collaboration areas for teachers. We've already turned one down in CTE into a classroom. We have several more that we can turn into classrooms. From there, we start taking teachers out of their rooms for conference periods, and we put classes in there, and then teachers will just kind of float. And I know we have one here, I don't know what Captain Kirk is, but I know there he is. You've been that teacher who has to float, and so that's how we get to utilizing that space. And it's not ideal to function at that, but could we function at that? Absolutely. I don't think Jeremy Ross or anyone in the high school wants to think about that, but we certainly do.
Well, we are a resource that will be around, so if you think of something later on, don't hesitate to send your questions in to the admin, and we'll be happy to support any additional questions that come about.